Hey everybody, this is Kevin and welcome back to yet another build video in my Estes rocket build series. Today we've got a really special one. You might recognize this one. This is a throwback to way back yonder, actually going back to 1969 when Estes first introduced the K-35 Constellation, and they've reissued it here in 2024. The model itself is going to be a limited edition, it looks like, based on the face card. So this is one of those you want to get them while you can. And this again is, now this was a prototype sent to me, and they have included to me a BT50 nose block and also a BT50 shaped size nose cone. So balsa nose plug and balsa nose cone. I will be implementing these into the build. But if anyone knows their history on the K-35 and you know what the original Constellation looked like, they've reproduced it to the T. The only thing I can tell that might be different is on the clear payload bay. Looks like they did put a black Estes decal on the reissue. I don't remember that being on the original. Maybe that's what they do to, you know, delineate between the old one and the new one. But everything else looks pretty original. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get this opened up and see what we got for parts. We'll just peel those staples off. Beautiful face card, absolutely gorgeous. Okay, let's go ahead and dump out all the parts, and then we'll get to the inventory list. Okay, here's the inventory. Let's go ahead and go through it one piece by piece. Okay, we got all the parts laid out here on the bench, and we'll just go through it alphabetically. First and foremost, we're going to start with the engine mount tube, which is the little, I want to say it's about 2 3/4 inch BT20 tubing. Okay, next we got letter B is our engine hook, right there, standard hook for the engine mount. C is our engine block, which is going to be this little yellow guy here. This is going to fit inside of our motor tube. Then we've got our centering rings. We've got a split centering ring and a regular complete centering ring. Then we've got a Malar retainer ring, which is right here, which will slip over the motor mount, keeping the engine hook down. Then we've got our main body tube, standard BT50 cardboard tube. Then H is our fin set, our balsa sheet. Now I'll tell you, first and foremost, this being H and I, which are the little fin tabs or fin tips, the wood is a little bit on the warp side. So what I'm going to do is off camera, I'm going to leave all the parts in their template. I'm going to spray it down with some water, and I'm going to lay this under a press and wait for a good 24 hours and let it dry in a flat position. So if yours comes warped, don't fret it, not a big deal. Just moisten it and then just lay it under some heavy weight and completely flat, and that should solve your problem. Okay, then we've got a wooden dowel, which is this little guy right here. Then we've got our launch lug, which appears to be, let's see, 2 3/8 launch lug, standard 1/8 inch size. Then we got a little eye screw in here somewhere. Let's see if I can find our eye screw. You know, I don't see our eye screw. So that being said, I'm going to have to come up with an eye screw. Again, this is a prototype kit. They may have left some things out, so I will replace the eye screw with one that I've got on hand. Not a big deal at all. Those are readily available. So we'll get that replaced. We do have a pack of die cut tape strips, which is this little guy right here. Then we've got our shock cord, which is your standard Estes elastic rubber band cord. And we've got our parachute. And they do call for the nose block and the nose cone. I'm going to leave them in their bags for now, but just so you know, they will come with that in the kit. And last but not least, our decal set, which is laying right here. Beautiful set of decals. Gonna show those off to you. Gorgeous set right there. So that wraps up the inventory. Again, the only thing we were missing, it was the screw eye. I will locate one though. That's again not a big deal, and we'll get that added into the bag, and then we will begin the kit. So let me clear the board and we'll get right into the assembly of the engine mount. Okay, step one is the assembly of the engine mount. And this is a pretty straightforward process. All we need to do is take our body tube that's for the engine mount, and we're going to make 2 marks on it. One of them will be 1 inch from one end. So let me just line this up on a ruler. And we'll make a mark at 1 inch. And our second mark is going to be at 2.5 inches. Which conveniently is 1/4 of an inch from the end of the other side of the tube. So you can either measure 2.5 or 1/4 in from the other side. Okay, now the one at the 1 inch mark, I'm going to extend that, and you'll see why here in a bit. Okay, I'm going to go back to our 2.5 inch notch, and we're going to cut a small slit in it with an X-Acto knife. Okay, and just want to kind of wiggle it a little bit to widen it, and try to get this to pop into place, your engine hook. There, pops right in. Now you'll see why we extended that line, because the engine hook would have originally covered up the first notch that we made. So now we've extended it out so we can actually see it. Okay, the next thing we want to do is take our Mylar ring, slide it on from the front, over the hook, and then down, and we're going to glue it with wood glue down to that 1 inch line. Right there. So let's back this off a little bit. Take some wood glue and just run a small bead of glue all the way around the tube. Now as we go on to the glue, we're going to rotate and twist it to spread the glue more evenly, and we're going to stop it right at that 1 inch mark. You also want to make sure that your engine hook is parallel to the tube as best as you can get it. Okay, here we go. Okay, right up the line. Now you also want to remove, just to be neat and clean, you can wipe off any remainder of the glue that might have squeezed out, just to keep things nice and neat. So, okay, so there we have that assembly done. You also want to make sure you got paper towels on hand, because you're going to need to wipe your fingers off when you do this. Okay, the next thing we want to do is take our thrust ring, and it's going to glue to the inside of the body, the motor tube, just ahead of the engine hook. So you want to do a test fit. You may want to use your fingernail to remove any obstructions. There, that fits in better like that. Now in this case, we're going to put the glue on the ring. That way, as it's inserted, any excess glue will be squeezed out the front instead of going down the tube, which would eventually possibly block the installation of a motor. Okay, so we're just going to run a very thin bead of glue around our thrust ring. Insert it, and you can actually use your workbench to help drive it in. Okay, and then just wipe off any excess like that, and clean off any residual on your bench. Wouldn't hurt to put down a piece of wax paper before you actually do that step, but anyway, so you can see there the ring is right up against the engine hook, which will help support the engine hook and keep it from moving in the future. Okay, so that's all good to go. Now we're going to install our centering rings. The one with the slot is going to go toward the bottom of the tube, just like that, so we still have movement of the hook within the ring. And we're going to glue it in flush with the end of the tube, and the other ring we're going to glue it on flush on the front end of the tube. Okay, that one needs to be spread open just a little bit. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and run a bead of glue on the forward end. This one I'm going to spread a little bit. There we go, and press it flat onto your bench. Perfect. And we'll do the same thing on this. Now on this one you want to be careful and not get any glue on the hook, because you want it to be able to move freely to get the motor in and out. Okay. There we go. Perfect. It's flush as well. So now we're just gonna, real quick while we can, add some fillets to the interior side of these centering rings. You want to be careful not get any glue on the exterior of the green ring, because that'll interfere with this gluing into the body tube in future steps. Okay, got that one on, and we'll go ahead and do the rear one. Now remember, we want to stay away from the engine hook. So I'm going to use just a little bit less glue on this step. And remove anything that's on the outside of the green tube. There, just like that. Okay, now we're going to set this aside to dry, and it'll be ready for installation down the road. Okay, next step technically is to do the fins and taking them out, gluing them together. But one thing I want to do first though is get them as smooth as I can. I'm not going to be papering these fins or sheeting them with plastic like I normally do. I'm just going to paint them as is, but I do want to definitely put down some primer first and sand that and help seal up some of these grains. So in addition to taking regular 220 and sanding it like so, I will do this, but I'm going to keep the parts in the template, take them outside and primer both sides, and then sand that primer down, and probably do that 2 or 3 times until I can get that sealed, coated, and hopefully feeling like glass before I punch them out and start gluing the fin tips onto the fins. So I'm going to set that aside. See, it's already fallen out on me actually, so I may have to adjust my thought process on that, but I'm definitely going to get them primed first. So set that aside for now. But we can go ahead and prepare the body tube. And you may notice that there's some color in the spirals. I did my technique where I spray it with primer and then I immediately wipe it off with lacquer thinner. But what that does is it leaves the primer in the grooves, and I do 2 coats of that, and it's not perfect, but it gets it a lot better prepared for the final primer, which will make everything smooth and even. So got that done and prepared. I took a photocopy of the fin guide out of the instructions. I don't like to cut up the originals. We all have our little quirks. And I'm just going to go ahead and wrap this around the body tube, lining up the 2 notches. Lay a piece of tape to hold that on. And additionally, what I like to do is, you notice it can rotate in the paper. So I like to tape the paper down to the cardboard as well. That way, as I start marking it, it's not going to rotate on me. Okay, so we're just going to take a pencil and we're going to make some marks. Fin line. launch lug. I want to put an L next to that one. Another fin line. And a third fin line. Okay. Now you may ask, why aren't you marking the other side? Because when I lay it in my fin guide, it doesn't really need the two lines. It's just going to line up on the one mark and make a parallel line anyway. So I'm going to forego marking the second line. Okay, we can just slide that off now. And let's pick a side here I think is going to be appropriate. I think this one will work. Okay. Just going to hold that in position. And draw our line. Okay, this one's going to be our launch lug. And this should be our final fin line here. Okay, and you can verify everything's straight just by looking down the length of the tube. Hopefully you can see that as I rotate it up. You'll see that it's straight and parallel. All 4 lines that I marked. Okay, so now we're going to get back to working on the fins and preparing them to glue onto the body tube. Okay, as you can see here, the fins look quite a bit different than they did last time you did. I kept them in their template and I primed them with just standard Rust-Oleum primer, and then I sanded them down, sprayed it again, sanded it down again. It's a very, very nice smooth finish. It's still going to take more primer when we get it on the rocket, when we primer the whole thing as one, but this at least gets us started. It gets the wood sealed and it helps fill in some of that wood grain. But now it's time to glue the little tips onto the fin tips. I'll just do one on camera for the sake of time, but you'll get the idea. I'll cut this out. Okay, there we go. And let me just cut out 2 of these little guys for now. Okay, we'll set that aside. So there's a little bit more wood exposed on one end, so that's going to be the side that I actually glue the surface to. Just kind of doing an eyeball here, seeing how that's going to go. Actually, it would be a good idea to just kind of sand those little nubs off. And yeah, we're gonna sand this side down. I can actually just, I can glue one for now, and I can do the rest off camera and show you, but basically we're gonna put one on one tip like that. We're gonna get it as flush as we can all around the sides, and then the other one's gonna glue onto the opposing side like that. Okay, so that's how and it's gonna be pretty beefy and strong, which is good for landings. That's gonna help keep that tip from breaking off. So I'm gonna get some wood glue here and just put a little wood glue on the tip, and we can smear that around with our finger. Remember, the more you leave on there, the more it's gonna squeeze out when you attach it, so kind of minimalize things a little bit there. Okay, just set that in position and we'll kind of work it by feel. The best way to do it is just by feel. Okay, I'm going to actually just do the other 2 fins, and then when these dry, then we'll flip it over and we'll do the other side. So I'll go ahead and do all 3 fins in the same manner, and we'll come back when they're all done and we will be ready to glue these onto the body tube. Okay, now that the fin tips have dried, I've already sanded and rounded them over on 2 of them, and I'm going to show you how I did the 3rd one. But you'll see how they are stock when you glue the tips on. That's what you got. Pretty squared off there on the ends. And I'm going to show you a quick and easy way to make them round like that. So I do a little cheating, I'll admit. I do like to use my little sanding block that I created. I'm using the 5/16 inch. And what I do is I just take some 220, put it into the curvature there, wrap it around, and on the squared off one, just start working the tip into that curvature. Okay, you can already see that the curvature is forming on those wood panels. There's a little bit clearer. Okay, we'll work a little bit more, and then we're going to work the inside of the fin as well. Okay, so on the inner portion, you can see where it's sanded off that corner piece on both sides. But to get this piece on the inside here, I like to take some 220, 320, whatever you got, and stick it to the end of a popsicle stick, and that makes a fantastic little sanding bar. Just start flush and then start curling it in. Okay, then when you get the sides somewhat done, you can see that bottom side starting to curve out now. Then I'll just take some regular sandpaper and just kind of work it over the top, kind of rounding the sides. This just sort of smooths everything up, because the sanding block, the stick, kind of gives you some straight lines that you don't want. So just a piece of sandpaper in your hand will allow you to form that proper curvature. Okay, now that we can see what we're doing a little bit more, we can come back and fine tune it. There we have it. So there's a perfect little, I don't know what you call it, teardrop tip. I'm going to do the same thing on the inside of this fin, and then it'll look just like these other two. And then we're all set. We can, I am also going to take probably my 1/8, I think 1/4 is a little too large, maybe 3/16, and I'm going to sand the leading edge with the piece of sandpaper as well, just to get the leading edge rounded. Same technique as when I rounded off the tip here. So I'll do that, and well, let me do one real quick since we're here. I'm not sure if you can see that in focus or not, but it rounded the leading edge off. I'll do a little bit more, a few more passes. There, nice. So you lose that squared off look, more contoured, more rounded, more aerodynamic. So again, I'm going to do this to the other two fins as well. I'll finish up the one tip on here. But yeah, well, let me get all these done and then we'll come back and glue these onto the body tube. Okay, we're going to glue the fins on now. And I'll probably just do the first one and the other two off camera because it's going to be the same technique. But we'll see. Maybe I'll try my multiple at one time trick and I'll show you how that goes. But what I'm going to do first is tell you the way I like to glue my fins on is instead of gluing them on that center line, I like to glue them just to the right of that line. That way I can use the line as a reference to make the fin parallel to the tube. It's a lot easier to do that than try to get it on the center of the line and hope that it's parallel. I do want to scuff up the tube a little bit. I'll do this to, actually that was a launch lug line, so make sure you pay attention to what line you're doing. Okay, there we go. Okay, pretty straightforward process. Take your fin, and I like to use wood glue. And just run a bead of glue down the center line of the fin. Smear it down. Okay, then you take your tube, and we'll start with the one to the right of the launch lug. Line it up and place it right down where you want it to go. Right like that. Roll it a little bit to spread the glue, and then lift it off. And you can see we left some wet glue there on both parts. Just set that aside for now. Let it dry, and while it's drying, we can go to our second fin and do the same thing. Okay. Go to the next one, and let's do the other one on the other side of the launch lug. And we're going to line it up. Lay it down in place, roll it a little bit, and remove it. Okay, now by now, I can go back to the first fin because it's had long enough to set and tack up. So we can actually apply this permanently now. So let's lay it in position. We want it flush with the bottom of the body tube. Lay that down parallel to that line. And see how it holds? Just like that. So now we can press it. We want to get from behind. Make sure it is perpendicular to the tube. I think that looks pretty good right there. Okay. Okay, now we're going to go back and get our third fin. And we'll do this while fin number 2. I've got a plug up here. Okay. Okay. And we'll go to our third fin location, which is right here. Lay it down, roll it, and remove it. Okay, now I can go back to fin number 2, which is over here tacking up on me. And we can lay it in position permanently. Just like that. Looks perfect. Now if you get a little seepage coming out the sides, that's okay, because that's going to get filled in with our fillets anyway. So don't let that discourage you or bother you. You don't have to worry about cleaning it up. Now because we have no other fins to prepare, we're just going to have to wait a little bit longer while this dries. You can blow on it a little bit to help maybe air dry it. Okay, you can actually tell when it's tacked up. It kind of loses its gloss, and it has more of a hazy beigeish color to it. Okay, I think we're all set. Now we'll set this one in position and press it into place. Just like that. There we go. Look at that. Absolutely perfect. You may want to check real quick and make sure that it's level, meaning you've got all three fins flush with and equal to each other at the bottom of the body tube. See how they're all flush with the body tube there? Okay, so now I'm actually going to stand it vertically this way to take any stress off the legs. We're just going to let it dry. In fact, I'm going to let this dry overnight, and then we can come back tomorrow. We can do the launch lug and even do some fillets while we're at it. Okay, the fins I've had overnight to dry, and they are solid, and just I couldn't really ask for anything better. They are just as I wanted them. One thing I did do off camera was I did take the launch lug and I glued with super glue the wooden dowel. That's basically our standoff. I will glue that on after I do the fillets, only because the fillets, I don't want the launch lug in the way. The other thing I noticed is in the instructions, they don't tell you where up the line to mount your launch lug, but all the illustrations I can see show it even with the top of the fin. So that's where I'm going to place the launch lug. But again, we're going to do that after we do our fillets. I did mix up some rock epoxy, and it's pretty thick. This batch might be going out on me, so I better use it before I lose it completely. But we'll just take a bit, and we're going to drag it through the crevice, and we will use another popsicle stick to act as our shaper and former, because it's got the right radius to it that we want. Again, this is really, really thick. Thicker than I ever remember it being before. But yeah, we'll just take our popsicle stick and we're just going to draw that fillet down. Just like that. And we'll add the rest to this other fillet. And we'll draw that down and see how far it goes. Oh, the whole way. Okay, good. Let me do one more pass here. Okay. All right, so let me do the remainder of these off camera, and I'm going to clean up the residual overflow with some Q-tips and isopropyl alcohol. That cleans it up really well. So let me do the rest of these, but you can see those fillets just laid in there beautifully. So one, they're super strong, and two, it leaves a nice little contour that'll leave a really nice shape on the rocket. So I'll do the rest of these off camera, and we'll come back when we're done and glue on the launch lug. Okay, you can see I've got the fillets down all the way around. I did clean it up with some alcohol and Q-tips, so that little gloss you may see is just the residual alcohol evaporating off. But we got the fillets down nicely. Did some nice contours around the leading edge as well. Don't want to make it too pronounced though. So we're ready to glue the launch lug on. I did scuff up the tube just to the right of the line a little bit. If you remember, we did put our fins just to the right side of the lug, of the line, which means our launch lug is just the same, going to have to be laid down just to the right side of the line to be even between two fins. So I will take my lug, run a very thin bead of wood glue down the center of this dowel. Now this is a little bit tricky because we're not gluing the lug directly. We're using this little standoff, so it may tilt if I let it lean over. So I want to make sure and get it standing up vertically I'm sorry, horizontally, but the launch lug vertical while it dries. So let me get my little cradle here. We'll use it for support. Okay. I also want to get another Q-tip to help clean up some of that spill out, because it's going to be hard to fill that in later with a fillet. So let me kind of clean that up on both sides. Okay, and we're just going to eyeball it. Again, we're just to the right of the line now, and we want to get it parallel to the tube. And you want to get it before it starts to tack up, because then it's going to be hard to move. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Just like so. If you can see, that's going right down the parallel line of the tube. Okay, let me do another little cleanup here with another Q-tip. Okay, that'll help clean that up. And it's already starting to tack up on me a little bit, so I don't want to move it around too much anymore. But we want to make sure that the dowel is vertical, which it is, along with the launch lug itself. So, okay, looks good. Now we're just going to have to let it sit and dry. So I'm not going to touch it for a while. I'm going to let that harden up. Make sure I set that so it's sitting appropriately. Perfect, just like that. Okay, I'm going to leave that alone for a while to dry. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is prepare the balsa block for the payload bay. It's already pre-fitted. In fact, it goes down to about halfway, and then I sanded it down to get about halfway in, which is about where we want it. I did mark a B for black on the side that's going to go in the payload bay, and the reason is we're going to actually use the technique I use for my balsa fins. I'm going to glue a piece of 0.10 inch plastic, polystyrene plastic, to make a nice, smooth, clean surface to paint. That way when we put it up in the payload bay, it'll be a nice finish. So I've already got some 5-minute epoxy pre-mixed. Pretty straightforward process. I'm just going to spread the epoxy onto the balsa plug. Get it good and saturated. Now I want to scrape it all off. At least the majority of it. Let me get a little more on this side here. Okay, so I'm just going to take the flat end of the popsicle stick and drag it off. Okay, then I'm going to just take a little piece of plastic that I've already prepared and just set it on there. Easy as that. And we're just going to let that dry. And obviously trim around the edges, and it'll be ready for paint. So like I said, I'm just going to set that aside to dry now. Okay, and while we're at it, I want to go ahead and show you my nose cone. This was the balsa nose cone that you saw at the beginning of the video, and I have only primed it. But first I sanded it down with 400 and then 1000 grit sandpaper just to get the balsa down as level as I could. Then I primed it. Then I sanded the primer down, primed it again, and I did probably 3 or 4 cycles of that. And I'm just about there. It's taking the primer really good now. It's wet sanding, real smooth. I'd say about 1 or 2 more coats of primer and wet sanding, and she'll be ready for the red paint. So just want to show you where we're at with that. So I'll come back when this is dry and we'll trim this out, and my plan is to paint the plastic black, and then maybe an 1/8 of an inch of balsa, just color it black. But the main paint of black is going to go on the plastic itself. So we're going to have a black stripe on the bottom and a black stripe on the top on the outside of the plastic. And that way inserting the plugs or the nose cone won't affect the paint at all. Ideally it'd be nice to paint the inside, but it's just going to get torn up when you start sliding the balsa in. So that's how that's going to go. So next time you see this, it'll probably already have been painted. I'm going to do the rest of the sanding and painting off camera. And this, if I can get around to trimming it on camera, I will. Otherwise, you'll see this when this is painted also. Okay, so that's where we're at. Okay, now that the polystyrene plastic has had a chance to dry with the epoxy to the nose plug, we can go ahead and take I've got a brand new blade on here because we want it nice and sharp, and we just want to cut around the wood. And it's okay if you're a little on the outside because we're going to sand this anyway, just to make sure everything's flush. And it may take a couple passes. You could probably do this with scissors too, if you weren't too concerned about being close to the edge, but that's just going to require more sanding. So, but there you can see it's starting to come through. Do a little bit more here. The nice thing about these polystyrene sheets is you can fold them and they'll eventually just break off. There, just like that. Okay, not a bad cut. Not perfect, but like I said, we want to leave some for sanding. So let's take a piece of, this is pretty strong grit, this is 220, and just kind of wrap it around and rotate the plug inside the sandpaper. Okay, we're making improvement there. Okay, and then you can check your fit with the payload bay. Still not quite there yet. We're getting close though. We're definitely improving. Oh, so close. We are just right there. I think a few more rotations will get it. Yep, that did it. There we go. So you can see it's a nice clean finish. So once that gets painted black and you look in from the tube, it's going to be like looking at black glass. So that's going to be real sharp. Okay, excellent. Okay, quick update now on the payload bay. That's what we're going to be working on next. I have painted it, and you'll probably notice this wrap of tape around the center. That's just something to hold on to so I don't smear the clear plastic too much in the building process. But I did mask off and paint the upper and lower portion of the tube in black. And for obvious reasons, I painted the outside because it'd be darn near impossible to mask and paint the inside. But we do have the nose block that will be glued into the bottom of the payload bay. And I elected to sheet the nose block with polystyrene plastic sheet and then paint it and make a nice, clean, smooth surface. And once this is installed, it's just going to make a nice, clean effect on the inside of the payload bay. But before we glue this in, which we're going to glue with epoxy, I know the instructions call for plastic cement. However, plastic cement, if overused, does have the chance of melting and deforming and deshaping the plastic itself. So I've elected to go with some epoxy. That's what I got my little mixing table here for. But before we get to that, we're actually going to install our eyelet. Now, if you remember, the kit did not come with one. It was missing. I easily replaced it and I simply threaded this into this very, very porous balsa nose block. But now we want to go ahead and glue it in, and the glue is going to make it tighter and not come out. So let's go ahead and just put a dab of glue right there. And I'm also going to put a little bit on the eyelet threads, so the threads can take the glue down deeper into the hole as well. Okay. There we go. And then additionally, the little blob of glue there does somewhat form a fillet for you. So there's a nice little fillet that we've created. So we'll just let that dry. But I also want to mix up our epoxy now and get that installed into the payload bay. So let's grab, I've just grabbed some 5-minute epoxy here. And it's not going to take much. In fact, I want to keep it minimal because I don't want to risk making too big a mess. So let's just put a little dollop here and a dollop there of the resin. And we'll just mix these two up thoroughly. That's actually a lot more than I wanted to go with anyway. Now typically when you glue tubing and couplers and whatnot into each other, you want to put the glue on the inside of the tube. That way the coupler, or in this case the nose block, will push the glue forward. However, because this is a clear payload bay, we don't want to do that. I don't want to risk pushing glue forward. But I'm not going to just put it directly on the nose block. I'm going to start the nose block into the tube, and then I'll apply the glue and let it kind of slide some of the glue up into the tube. If you don't understand, you'll see here in a second what I'm getting at. Okay, so now I'm going to take my my tube and my nose block, and I've already marked a midway point. This is a 1-inch block, so at the 1/2 inch mark, I made a little notch in it with a pencil. And we're just going to get that started there, just like that. Now I'm going to run a thin ring of epoxy right around here. Just being very delicate, and I don't want to make a mess. You definitely want to keep the glue off of the outside of the tube. Okay, now we'll just simply twist and push it up into the tube, up to that mark that we made. Okay, and you can see some did squeeze out. And to clean that up, we're just going to take a Q-tip and kind of pull away from the plastic tube as I remove it, just to prevent any from getting up onto the tube itself. And you may want to use multiple Q-tips. There we go. And then we can just do kind of a clean up. There we go. Okay, and you can see on the inside we left a nice clean surface in there. Very nice. So, okay, so we're going to let all this dry, and we'll come back and work more on the nose cone portion of it. Okay, now we're going to begin with the decals. I am going to do the nose cone portion of it first, and this is pretty straightforward and simple. It's a single Estes logo decal. We'll go ahead and drop that in the water. and it's going to apply right in the middle of our clear payload bay. So I'm just going to get a little moisture on there to make things easier to adjust. And the release time on these decals is pretty quick. So yeah, it's already starting to break free here. So, well, let me give it another second. I thought I saw it moving, but I don't think it was. And always have your paper towel ready to go. We'll use it to pat it down and pull out the water and wrinkles from behind. Okay, there we go. And we're just going to lay it down in the middle of the tube and pull the backing out. Okay. And kind of fiddle with it, get it where you want it, adjust it. That looks pretty good. Maybe just a little up on that side there. Okay, let's get some of this moisture out of the way. Nice. Okay, and we'll just wipe down the remainder of the water that's lingering. And we're going to call that good. That is a gorgeous decal on the clear payload bay right there. All right, now we'll get to the rocket decals. Okay, now that all the painting is complete and dry and cured, you can see the one silver black fin on the tail there. We're going to put the remainder of the decals on. We already put this one on the payload bay earlier, but let's go ahead and remove the payload bay just to make things a little simpler for us. But we're going to get this wrapped up. Now, I do want to place the circular wrap that goes all the way around. I'm going to place it right between the top of the launch lug and the top of the body tube. So we're going to lay it right there in the middle. And I'm going to use the launch lug actually as my seam line. So we're going to wrap everything around to meet up in that line right there. So let me go ahead and get that started in the water. Get it soaking. I've also got all my numbers cut out for the fins, and we've got our two USA logos that are going to go down in line with the fins. Okay, so tell you what, while that's soaking, I can be rubbing this with some water. That'll make sliding it around a little bit easier for final alignment. Okay, and I've got Q-tips on the ready, and I've got a paper towel ready to go, so we're all set. Let's see if this is broken free yet. Almost. Okay. Like I said, I'm going to lay it right in line with the launch lug, and we'll pull the backing out from under it as we wrap it around. Well, that looks pretty darn good right from the get-go. I'm actually afraid to tweak it any more than that because it's right where I want it. The seam line is right in line with the launch lug, and everything lines up together. So I'm just going to start now in the middle, kind of gently press out the water and any wrinkles, which we fortunately didn't have any. Okay, well that really couldn't have been any easier. That was quite nice. Okay, so that takes care of that decal. Now we're going to work on our two USA decals. And they're going to go above the white fins right in this area here on either side of the launch lug. So we're going to set them there. In fact, let me get the second one soaking so it can be ready for us. Let me actually do it this way. Okay, for this one I'll use a Q-tip. Beautiful. And that looks sharp. Okay, we'll get the other one out. Okay, I'm going to hold it in such a way I can see both sides so I can get them in alignment with one another vertically. Okay, that looks good. Okay, that looks really sharp. So if you want to compare this to anything, what I like to do is use my face card, and that's what I'm judging this off of. So you can see the orientation there with respect to the face card. That's what we want, and that's what we got. Okay, now we're going to go down to the fins and do our numbers. We'll do the black fin first because that is number 1. So let me drop both number 1s in the dish. And they're going to go vertically right in the middle of the fin, but it looks like maybe about the 1/3 of the way down position. So that's where we're going to place that. Okay, that looks just about right. Okay, we'll roll that out. Okay, we'll put the other one on the other side. Let's get a little more water on there. way we can move it. Okay. Okay, that takes care of fin number 1. Now we'll drop number 2 in the bin. And number 2 is going to be the fin back behind it here. So we're going to work on this one now. So wait, let me just go ahead and get the 3 started in the water, since this is going pretty quick on the application. Okay, let me add a little bit of water there for sliding. Okay, it curled under just a little bit, so I'm just going to pull it out with my knife. I'm not going to cut it, I'm just going to pull the corner out. There we go. Okay, now let's turn it the right direction. Okay, looks good. And we'll go to the other side. Okay, that wraps up all the decal work on the rocket. It came out looking stunning. This is going to be just absolutely gorgeous on the launch pad. We still need to wrap up a few things in regards to the shock cord mount, but we'll go ahead and get that up and mounted here shortly, and then we'll call it complete. Okay, just a couple steps before we're complete. First, I'm going to go ahead and remove the payload bay once again, just to make life a little easier on me while I install our motor mount. Now, the instructions call for aligning the launch lug, the engine hook with the fin just to the left of the launch lug. So if you're looking at the launch lug from above, it's going to be the number 2 fin. And we're going to slip it in this direction. Now I want to apply the glue just shy of the length of where the centering ring is going to be. So I'm going to put my thumb on this stick till it stops just short of there. I'm going to take some wood glue. Coat the end of it here. Put it in until my thumb hits the tube and stop, and just going to rotate that around. And it's going to take a few coats. Okay. Then we're going to take our motor mount and we're going to slide it in just past the first centering ring. And I'm going to leave a little opening there, and I'm going to put another coat of glue at the bottom of the tube for the bottom centering ring to adhere to. Okay, now let me line up my, again, engine hook with the number 2 fin. And press it down into position, and we'll get the motor mount flush with the bottom of the tube. Right there, perfect. Okay, you can see how the launch lug operates just to the left of our launch lug. So the motor mount is complete. Okay, now we're going to work on our shock cord mount. I'm going to take my trifold, which I've cut out, and I'm going to go ahead and spread some glue on number 2 and 3. And I'm going to spread that around. Okay, we'll lay our cord across 3 and 2 at an angle. That way when we fold it over, it won't double up on itself. Okay, let me add some to the number 1. Okay, I'm going to fold that over. Press it down nicely, and then we'll add some to the top of number 1 again. Spread it. And now fold 1 and 2 onto number 3. Lay it down nice and flat. Now I'm going to take this over to my press, and I'm going to weigh this down under some heavy weights to get it completely flat. And then once it's dry, I can fold a little curvature into it, and it'll be ready to apply to the body tube. So I'll come back once this is dry. Okay, last step in the building of the K-35 Astron Constellation is we are going to install the shock cord mount into the body tube. You can see how flat it is after pressing it in my weighted press. So now the trick is we want to get this as far down as we can, enough to clear the shoulder of the nose cone, of the payload bay. So let's go ahead and put some wood glue on our mount. And this is where it gets messy. spread it. Always have paper towels on hand. Okay. And definitely want to clean your other hand because you don't want to put any residual glue onto the body tube. But now we're just going to run this down pretty much as far as our finger can make it, and then press it into the body tube. Okay, and you can see there it is. Make it as flat as you can. Okay. And then while that's drying, we can take the other end of our rubber shot cord mount and take our upper stage, the upper body tube where it's got the payload bay, and thread that into our eyelet. And we're going to run a double knot on it. Okay, and I want to trim this tail so it's not long enough to get caught up in the shoulder, because if it gets caught up in that shoulder right there, it could jam up on ejection and bad things will happen. So let's cut that tail a little short so it can't quite reach the shoulder. And I'm just going to put a little dab of wood glue on the back side of the knot to prevent it from ever wanting to come undone. Spread that out a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry for a little bit and we'll come back and do a final closeout. Well, there you have it. That is the completion of the K-35 Astron Constellation. Relatively easy to build rocket. Not too challenging, other than I would say probably rounding the teardrop fin tips was probably the hardest part. But you know, if you've got some basic sanding skills, that's easily conquerable. But yeah, decals laid on nice. The payload bay looks excellent on the nose of the rocket. Yeah, you can see everything fits in there nicely. And the nose cone comes off if you wish to insert an altimeter or any other little payload bay. If you do, you want to make sure you probably wrap this seal with some Scotch tape, clear tape, or just, you know, put more masking tape on the inside of the nose cone, making this a much tighter fit, whatever you choose to do. Everything else looks good. We got good movement on our engine hook, so we can get an engine installed easily enough. So outstanding little rocket. I cannot wait to get one of these in the air. Again, just beautiful throwback to the old days when this was part of the original K-series rockets of Estes. So that wraps this video up. Thanks everybody for watching. God bless, and we will see you in the next build.